Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Given here, back into the video. Today's episode, we're taking a look on why should you be playing Qiyana in the mid lane. Starting out, she's an extremely powerful team fighting assassin, and unlike many other assassins who only pick off one target, Qiyana can actually win entire team fights with just a single ultimate if it hits the right terrain. This makes her incredibly valuable in coordinated fights and around objectives like Dragon or Baron. And secondly, Qiyana also has amazing mobility between her dash from her E, the terrain dash from her W, and the ability to reposition with elements. She can weave in and out of fights very quickly. This mobility makes her very hard to catch if played correctly. And thirdly, she's a very high skill cap champion, so she has a lot of element combinations, different combos, and a lot of outplay potential. So if you're very skilled at the champion, it will show immediately. And then finally, Qiyana is just one of the best assassins in the game for snowballing. If she gets ahead early, she can roam to side lanes, she can pick off enemies, and completely take over the map. Now, Qiyana does have some weaknesses. She's very squishy, meaning if you get crowd controlled or caught out of position, she can die very quickly. Her laning phase is also pretty good, but it's not dominant. And she can trade well once she gets abilities, but she struggles against champions who can poke her safely from range. Due to all this, Qiyana is going to rely on very smart trades, timing, and roaming, rather than brute forcing the lane. Now, understanding her abilities is going to be crucial because her entire kit revolves around terrain elements. So we have her passive Royal Privilege. So Qiyana's passive causes her basic attacks and abilities to deal a bonus damage to enemies she hits. However, the bonus damage has a cooldown per target, meaning she cannot repeatedly trigger this on the same enemy immediately. And the important mechanic is that gaining a new element resets this cooldown, allowing Qiyana to deal the passive damage again. So skilled players will constantly rotate the elements during fights to maximize damage. We also have her Q, Edge of Extol. So Qiyana's Q is a straight line skill shot that damages enemies hit. The first enemy struck takes full damage, while enemies behind them take significantly reduced damage. Because of this, positioning is going to be very important when trying to poke or secure kills. And if Qiyana is holding an element, the ability then becomes empowered, gaining increased range and additional effects depending on the terrain element. So each element is going to have a unique effect. So we have a rock, which is going to deal massively increased damage to enemies below 50% health. And this is going to be like your execution tool for finishing targets. We have her river element. So this is going to root the enemy briefly and then slow them. So this is great for locking down enemies during trades or setting up kills. And we also have the brush element. So this is going to create a rectangular stealth zone. And then Qiyana is going to become invisible while inside it and gain bonus movement speed. So this is incredibly useful for outplaying enemies, disengaging, or repositioning during fights. We also have her a W Terra shape. So her W has both passive and active effects. The passive is that while holding an element, Qiyana gains bonus attack speed, increased attack range, and bonus on hit damage. She also moves faster when she is near the terrain type she is currently holding while out of combat. And then the active effect is Qiyana dashes a short distance towards terrain and collects that element. This ability is extremely important because it allows Qiyana to constantly switch elements, resetting her passive and Q cooldown. And next we have her E Audacity. So Qiyana's E is a point and click dash. She dashes directly to the target enemy and damages everything she passes through. So this ability is primarily used for engaging on enemies, gap closing during combos, and setting up guaranteed Q hits. Because the dash follows the target, it makes landing Q much easier during your burst combo. And finally, we have her ultimate Supreme Display of Talent. Qiyana's ultimate is where her teamfight power truly shines. She launches a large rectangular shockwave that knocks enemies back. If the knockback pushes enemies into terrain like walls, brush, or river, this is going to trigger a massive shockwave explosion that deals huge damage and also stuns enemies hit. If used correctly in tight jungle areas, this ability can stun an entire enemy team, instantly winning the fight. This makes Qiyana extremely dangerous around dragon pits, a baron pit, and jungle corridors and walls. Now let's talk a little bit about her combos. So because Qiyana resets abilities with elements, her combos can be extremely fast and deadly. So her short trade combo is going to be by grabbing the river or the ice element, then perform a QWQ auto attack. So your Q is going to root the enemy, immediately W to grab another element, usually rock, use Q again for the additional damage, and then follow with an auto attack to trigger the passive damage. This combo is going to be fast. It's going to proc your electrocute if you're running it, and it deals heavy burst damage while keeping you relatively safe. So from here, you can either continue chasing with your E or disengage with your mobility. We also have our all-in combo. So if you're going in for a full burst kill, you can perform a little bit longer combo. So grab an element, E into your ultimate, auto, Q, auto, W, auto, Q. So you want to weave in autos in between every ability after you ult. So grab your element, E onto the target, you immediately use your ultimate to knock the enemy into terrain, auto attack while they're stunned, Q for burst damage, grab another element with your W, and then Q again for another empowered Q hit. So for her matchup, she's going to be pretty strong against other assassins. So she's pretty good against like a Zed, a Talon, or Katarina. And most of the time she can outmaneuver them with her terrain mobility and just burst them down very quickly. She does struggle a bit against control mages, so she's not as strong against something like a Victor, an Orianna, a Syndra. It really just depends on how those first 5 or 6 levels go. But if they play their champions properly and really zone you off, you're going to be so far behind that it's going to be difficult to ever get the itemization that you need to be able to burst them down. For her runes, the best rune setup is going to be Electrocute. This rune massively increases her burst damage and synergizes perfectly with her quick combos. So your typical rune setup is going to be Domination Tree, Electrocute, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Ultimate Hunter, and your secondary tree is going to be Precision or Inspiration depending on preference. For your starter items, you're going to be going Dorn's Blade into a health pot and a stealth ward, and your early back is going to be 2 long swords and boots. Your core item is going to be Hubris, along with the Profane Hydra, both giving us that much needed lethality and ability haste. And your final 3 items will be Grudge into Edge of Night into Serpent's Fang. If you are fighting against other assassins, you can also go something like an Axiom Arc. It's going to allow you to get your ultimate up a bit quicker and be able to all in them before they can all in you. So a really good item when people are just kind of one-shotting each other back and forth. For your ability order, you'll be taking a W level 1, Q level 2, E level 3, then you'll max QWE from there. Your summoner spells will be Flash and Ignite. Now let's talk a little bit about the laning phase. So as a mid laner playing Qiyana, your primary goal is to farm safely and reach your power spikes. So during the first few levels, avoid taking too much poke damage. You become much stronger once you're level 3 and you have all 3 of your abilities. At this point, you gain access to your quick burst combo that we talked about earlier, and this allows you to essentially just threaten enemies with heavy trades. Once you reach level 6, your kill pressure becomes much higher because your ultimate's crowd control and damage. Now, during the mid game, the bot lane usually rotates to mid, and that means you'll typically take on a side lane. And Qiyana does pretty well in side lanes because you have strong dueling potential, you can escape ganks with mobility, and you can quickly roam to fights. However, Qiyana's biggest strength is going to be in your team fights near terrain, so after pushing waves, you should really look to group with your team around objectives. Qiyana is kind of unique to be an assassin and also a good team fighter. Now, going into the late game, this is where team fighting is going to matter a lot more, and Qiyana is still going to play like a true assassin, but instead of engaging first, you're going to flank from the side or from behind, wait for the fight to begin, allow those things to kind of use some of their CC so you don't get locked down, and then target the enemy backline carries such as an ADC or a mage. From here, you have 2 options. You can burst the enemy with your massive damage combo, or you can use your ultimate to stun multiple enemies into terrain and just kind of swing the fight through CC. So a well-placed ultimate can easily win a team fight by itself, especially in those jungle choke points. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. See you guys in the next one.